And turns out that he was just introducing her as his wife. And so that's something that is really important when it comes to corporate is how are other people describing you who are you're partnering with? And then your actual like life partner, right? Like this person needs to know what you need in order to succeed, whether that's you're doing a business together or, hey, honey, I just need you to knock on the office door to show respect for my work. Or maybe your office is in your master bedroom right now. And so your spouse feels, like that's his space too, or her space too. And so making sure that, because that's something I had to do when I started my business, was like, honey, I just need you to knock on the door. Like when I'm working, please just knock on the door.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Lori Potts. Lori is a public speaking coach, career coach, and corporate communication trainer. As a career coach, she advises mid-level women to advance their careers by becoming more aware of the internal biases holding them back. He teaches them the communication skills to be perceived as the confident women they really are. 88% of her clientele get interviews in 3 months or less. As a recovering insecure woman, she gets to help transform women's lives through her own lived experiences of discrimination and overcoming self-sabotaging behaviors she was conditioned with during childhood. Lori has done communication training for Facebook, coached TED Talk and keynote speakers, and helped them craft their messages and improve the presence on stage and their careers. She prides herself in creating positive change by coaching teams and individuals to become their best selves while staying true to who they are. Lori has a bachelor's degree in organizational communication and lives in Arizona with her husband and daughter. Congrats on creating positive change and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks, Carl. Glad to be here.
I'm really excited to have you on and to talk about this because I think it's a really important topic that when it comes to workplace culture and employee experience, a lot of companies are struggling with. I think it's something that obviously the organizations need to address from a systemic and cultural level, but also especially for like women navigating these difficult environments, what are some steps that they can take to like strengthen their own positioning and advocate for themselves better and just be more resilient in a workplace that's often stacked against them? So you seem like the perfect person to talk about that. So how do you recommend, like what's some of the success stories? How can women better advocate for themselves in the workplace?
Yeah, it's a great question. Just focusing on what we can control is really important. A lot of the time, we can look at, like you said, right, this huge system that's been operating for centuries that doesn't necessarily serve women, and focusing on the things that are within your control is what I help women with. So, how you communicate, your tonality, it depends on what it is that I'm working on women with, but if it's public speaking, then that's helping you not get interrupted in meetings. That's getting you to speak up more. Sometimes it's just something simple like, oh, thanks so much, George, for your perspective. Let me finish and then you can hop in, right? And you make sure that you're heard and that it also has that balance of like your opinion still matters too, right? Whether you're a woman or not, everyone has to have this blend of warmth and competence in order to have like that balance of likability. So people will give you, more projects, more opportunities, and see you as capable and also someone who they feel comfortable with. And so that's what I help women with, is helping them give that balance of warmth and competence so people will give you more opportunities. And so people don't see you automatically as aggressive, or people don't see you automatically as cold, right? There's that balance. And women do experience like that likability trap a lot more than men. But anyone, like I said, has to have that balance in order to achieve what they want to, usually, especially in a corporate environment. And that's kind of what I help women with.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think it's something that is, there's like the culturally and kind of the tropes around like assertive women that are standing up for themselves. Often they are seen as always like cold, or it's like it's too. There's all like a negative spin put on it, or negative bias towards it. Whereas if a guy acts the same way, as they got the positive spin, which is completely like biased and unfair. And so I think, like I said, it's definitely important for both men and women when they're navigating workplace communication situations to be more aware of how they're showing up and how they're communicating and the habits they have when they're communicating, because no matter which way the bias is spinning, there's still their success is going to be amplified if they're more aware of how they communicate and how they're being perceived by people.
Right.
And I think for women, it's even more important because there is that negative spin to it. So even though you can't necessarily control the culture you're in by yourself, knowing how to at least be more aware of the way you're showing up and the steps you can take to mitigate that bias, or to try and like cut it off at the pass, so to speak, so you're not as subjective to it, is a really valuable skill to develop for anyone who's even not trying to aim for a leadership role, just trying to succeed in your existing role.
Yeah.
That having that awareness is something that I think most people aren't aware of, how they're showing up or how they're communicating, or sort of the habits they've built either consciously or like through their, like I said, upbringing. In your bio, you can like your condition. Women are often like kind of just
conditioned from a really young age to
behave these ways. So I'd love to hear some success stories of how you've helped women achieve these results and what those results were, because there's a little hint of that of like 88% get interviews in 3 months. That, especially in this job market, that's amazing. So what are some success stories you have that can show off how just awesome this impact can be on someone's career?
Yeah. I'm trying to think back to some of them. Because like the last year has been hard. Like I've had clients get a role and then like 2 months later they get laid off. And so yeah, this last year has been tricky. Because I don't want to include people who, I'm just gonna have to edit this. Include people who like have just like gotten laid off right away. I feel like that's not like an ideal situation. Because I feel like you're kind of asking like what I do in the workplace, but like that result is for job seeking. So I'm not sure how to align the question.
So just give an example of like, so when you help someone in the workplace is fine. I just want to use that as an example of like you did a great like stat in the bio, but just any great success story from even as in career where it wasn't like a job search stuff, it was just a good impact on their career.
Yeah. Like you said, like a lot of the time we're conditioned to make ourselves smaller. So one of the things that I help women do is like replace phrases that they use that are diminishing their competence, like other people's cues of their confidence. Like, if that makes sense. Instead, replace it with, because what you're really trying to get when you say that is like feedback on, is there, like, do you have any more questions? Is there anything else I can clarify? So use those statements. Anything I can clarify about that? Or do you have any further questions? Right? So instead of saying, if that makes sense, replacing those phrases just magnify, like it completely replaces the lack of competence, because it's almost like you're questioning yourself, right? When you're saying, if that makes sense, instead replacing that and just saying something instead that complete that helps them communicate that competence instead of like warmth, because so often like we're taught to be so demure and take up less space. Phrases like just and yeah, the other one, if that makes sense, those two are very very overused by women. And so, hi Kitty.
Yes, this is Cosmo. He likes to join in. So what's a success story you can share of you helping someone to replace these, and what was kind of the impact they had on their career and their experience at work?
Yeah. So my client last year, she was looking for a role after taking a break from the workplace and having another baby. And we got her just like so many interviews in 1 month, just interview after interview after interview. I think she had like 5 or 6. And I helped her like with her networking, but especially that. I mean, she was an HR consultant, but people, when she went to these networking events, didn't really see her as a consultant. Like she was partnering with her spouse as an HR consultant, and her husband did like the business development part of things. And she was also looking for an HR role because their business was still growing. And so they were both doing like a regular corporate job while building this business. And so I was teaching her, certain phrases that she was using that were killing her credibility. And I also told her, how is your spouse introducing you? Does he say, this is my wife? Or does he say, she's our HR piece. She's our HR consultant. She handles XYZ things. And turns out that he was just introducing her as his wife. And so that's something that is really important when it comes to corporate, is how are other people describing you who you're partnering with? And then your actual like life partner, right? Like this person needs to know what you need in order to succeed, whether that's you're doing a business together, or, hey, honey, I just need you to knock on the office door to show respect for my work. Or maybe your office is in your master bedroom right now. And so your spouse feels, like that's his space too, or her space too. And so making sure that, because that's something I had to do when I started my business, was like, honey, I just need you to knock on the door. Like when I'm working, please just knock on the door. It just shows that you really do value my work, and you value the time that I'm spending on this. Even if I'm not on a call, like I still need you to just knock. Just treat it like my office space.
Yeah, I like those, the example there of a lot of those phrases that are often seem like filler words in a way, or filler phrases that they're just trying to communicate that you're done talking, or that you're the just or the kind of, those sort of things. But when you remove them, or you replace them with something that, instead of showing, or instead of unintentionally communicating uncertainty, like, does that make sense? We may repeat it with, do you have any questions? It shows that you're confident that you explained it well and that it should be understood, but you want to know if someone else has any other questions. It puts the responsibility of clarifying on the person who you're communicating with, not with yourself. And so it is interesting how those subtle changes of phrase or getting rid of stuff like the justs or the kindas that undercut the authority and confidence in what's being said has a huge impact on the way people are perceived. And what you said there about the way your client's husband was introducing her as the wife first, I can see that being a big problem for her professional credibility and that sort of stuff. But I think also there's, as you were talking about the communication challenges or some of these other words, I remember maybe it was when we were first connecting, like before that we recording, but just a lot of people start with, when they start saying that, by saying sorry, like they start just by apologizing right away, or they end the phrase with right. I've had some guests on the show that as they're talking and looking back through the transcripts as I'm editing, the end of almost every other sentence ends with right, because it just kind of undercuts what they're saying, because they're constantly asking for validation. Like, is that correct? Is that correct? Are you on the same page with me?
Yeah.
And it's a nervous thing, but it stands out when you really notice it.
Yeah. It's one of the forms of up talking. So up talking is when you end your sentence as if it's a question, even though it's a statement, like I just did.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a question inflection at the end. So this really is a huge problem if you are trying to be credible, because it sounds like you are questioning what you yourself are saying. That right aspect is something that people do a lot if they're doing like their own podcast where they don't have a guest sometimes, but sometimes when they're having a conversation, they'll do it as well. Yeah, it's one of those habits that people really need to get out of to communicate more credibility, because you don't want to sound like you're questioning yourself. You want to sound sure of what you're saying. I had a client a few years ago. We were working on interpersonal communication and public speaking, and he was starting a business, and his friends said, "Oh, you should sound more confident when you're talking about that." And he was confused. He's like, "But I did sound confident." So he just wasn't aware of, at the end of every sentence, he's doing this up talking. And his was very subtle, but it was enough that people were picking up on it. And so we worked with him on some like physical cues he could do with his body to speak like at a lower resonance at the end of his sentences. So if you can work on, if that's something that you do, if you say right at the end of your sentence, or just like ask a friend, "Hey, when I talk, do I sound like I'm asking a question sometimes when I'm actually trying to make a statement?" Like someone who's going to be honest with you. If you can ask someone who's going to be honest with you, you're going to make a lot more progress. Don't ask someone who's just like overly nice. Like you really want someone who's going to help you and be honest with you if you want to make progress in communication and sound more competent.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great suggestion. And it reminded me of, I'm in a Toastmasters group because I've been working on these sort of like filler words and other communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the members, one week she had us everyone do this thing where you use all the AI like record bots and chat bots that can do transcripts from when you record something. If you record yourself saying something into video and then look at the transcript, it'll show you all the ums and uhs and buts and filler words. And you'll also get to see all the like the rights or you can hear the inflection back when you are playing it back to yourself. Because when you're talking, it's often hard for you to hear it because you're used to the way your voice sounds and you're often thinking about what you're saying, so you're not paying attention to it. But when you hear a recording of yourself, not only can you focus on more on what you said, but also you sound different to yourself because you're hearing it through your ears, not through your jawbone. And that is enough for you to pick out more of the subtle bad habits that you might be overlooking when you're saying it in the moment. And it's really fun to see. I get this from editing the podcast software, how often people use these filler words, or how often these little idiosyncrasies of language that in the moment you overlook and don't seem that important, but when you realize how people are perceiving them because they are listening and they are paying attention, and it really opens your eyes to how you're presenting yourself in a way that weren't aware, and could be having a huge impact on how you're being perceived and respected by other people.
Absolutely. And filler words is something I'm working on. I say like way too much. It's a problem. It's just something that I learned as a teenager from, it's just one of those things that my generation used a lot. And so it's something that is on my list, but it takes lots of practice.
Yes, I was fortunate that my dad would hammer out every time you keep hammering on the like thing long enough that I broke that habit with his help.
Yeah.
And I in the Toastmasters group, when there's a role where you're supposed to count and keep track of all the filler words people use.
Oof.
And whenever it's not my role for one of the meetings, I'll have a whole list of all the different filler words people used, and there'll be times people say, "Oh, I didn't hear any filler words from that person." I'm like, actually, by the way, they said like 30 times, and people, oh, what? So it's when you get your ear trained for it, it's a really valuable habit to have, because it makes a big difference on how confident you come across when you're communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And so even for men or for women, just having this like recording yourself and then hearing how often you use filler words, or having an accountability buddy that if you're working together, or it's like your partner or your spouse, calling each other out on excessive filler word usage will help you break that habit, because it is something that is hard to self-regulate because you're in the habit of using it. But when someone else helps by calling you out on it, it becomes really obvious and easier to break that with the accountability partner.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband does this funny thing at work. He is a board certified behavioral analyst, so he works with kids with autism, and that field is dominated by women. He's very gifted at what he does. He's very good. Loves working with kids. He's a kid himself at heart. Anyways, he started helping the women not say sorry so much by telling them, "Oh, I accept your apology," like when they say sorry. And he's just a very like funny, sarcastic guy, and so like they know that he's just like giving them a hard time. But now they've started saying sorry less, because they're not really saying, "Oh, I apologize for like speaking up," right? But that's what you're really doing. When you say sorry, you're apologizing for just being there, for using your voice, for saying whatever you want to in the meeting. And so, yeah, if he's not like with parents in a meeting or something, if it's just a team meeting and they say sorry, he's like, "Oh, I accept your apology." It's just like a funny way to recondition them to not say sorry so much. And it's
I love that. That's so awesome. And I think it's a great way of going about it, because it can come across as being like patronizing or condescending if it wasn't from that fun space.
Yeah, he's a very fun-loving guy.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Lori. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Lori, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.